I didn't know what I was doing. I was
Yeah.
freestyling everything. And on top of that, I started to have some mental health issues. I actually remember the first time I really had a panic attack was actually the night before a show. Thought I was losing my mind.
Wow.
I canceled it. And that was the start of taking that whole 1.5 year break. Know yourself, go to therapy, get mentored, get discipled. If you haven't, you're placing where God should be in your life
Yeah.
in a different category, nowhere. You're absent of that. And so what is in place of that? And a lot of times, either those things are not fulfilling, they're partially bringing you down.
This is James Rousseau, a.k.a. Trig, and let me welcome you to the Coiling Solutions Show. All right, y'all. Welcome to another Artist Insight episode. I'm going to call it an outtake from the Coiling Solutions Show. And, man, I'm honored to have a brother in the house. He's come from a long way. I didn't realize how far he was coming from, but Edify is in the building. If you don't know Edify, he's a CHH artist, producer, and mental health counselor. We're going to talk about all three things. From Detroit, open mics to national tours, worship leading at a hip-hop church, and now serving others through counseling. His story is one of redemption, purpose, and building others up. We're going to go through it all. Edify, welcome to Holy Culture.
Man, thank you so much for having me. That intro was flattering.
Thank you,
It was
brother.
amazing.
It's just
Thank
about you.
Man.
It's just...
Well, yeah, it was a drive, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
Thank you for coming, bro. Particularly today, it's kind of raining cats and dogs out, so I'm going to encourage you after this to indulge yourself in a cheesesteak from Max and I favorite place. We will not say the name on the air because we don't want to blow it out and ruin it, but we will tell you where
A
to
hidden
go.
gem.
A hidden gem,
Okay.
if you will.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. I always ask the same question to start because I think it's helpful. What's one thing you can share with this audience that most people don't know about you? And I mean, when I say most people, I mean some of your closest friends will hear this and say, I did not know that about this brother.
That's a really good question.
Pull the mic a little closer, too. Let's make sure we get all of this answer.
Mic check.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. At first, when you asked it, I'm thinking I'm kind of an open book.
Mm-hmm.
So most people know the details of my life who know me.
Yeah.
But I will say one thing about myself that most of my listeners or other artists that are in the space don't know about me is that I've been to Russia. I used to play hockey.
Really?
Yep. So I went over there with a team from the U.S. I think we were there for about 2 weeks. And I played in a tournament there in Moscow.
When was this?
2006 or 7.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Was this, is that high school years?
Yeah, I was a freshman.
Okay.
I was a freshman playing for a under 18 hockey team.
Yeah.
So I was younger for that team, but yeah, I got
So kind of
picked up.
community team, not the high school
So,
itself team. but-
Yeah. With hockey, there's travel is more predominant.
Okay.
High school is kind of a little bit under, unless you're in Minnesota or some of those states that
Yeah.
high school hockey is kind of it's top tier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played travel hockey most of my teenage years.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
So going to Russia, that was an experience.
Well, I was going to say, what was that experience like?
I enjoyed it a
Is
lot.
that your first international travel?
No, it wasn't the first time I'd been over there or over to Europe.
Okay.
But I had never been to the eastern part. So I think when I was like little, my parents took me on a trip. We went to Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, and we had some friends from Michigan that lived out there. So we stayed with them a little bit.
Okay.
But outside of that, that was the only travel I'd really done.
Yeah.
And it was a very unique experience. So yeah.
Interesting. So what made you stop playing hockey?
That's kind of part of my testimony a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't always share that piece going into it. It's like I got saved, I got baptized. Part of the reason why I did that was I was an athlete.
Okay.
And I made a junior team, which is like semi-pro for hockey. And it was in Ottawa, Canada. And I got hurt a little bit before that. I had some issues with my ankle. And they took me from like top 4 defensemen on the team to maybe you'll play, maybe you won't.
Gotcha.
So after that, I kind of was like, oh, I could keep trying to, make teams and do this. And, I really didn't want to be away from home like that.
Yeah.
I decided to go to college right out of high school. And that's where I kind of got introduced to Christian hip hop, got introduced to, the faith in a new way. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was the transition.
Look at that, man. Look at that. Okay. So you started making music as a teen in Detroit. What was that kind of early environment like? And like, what role did hip hop play in your upbringing? I mean, Detroit, I mean, is a hip hop city.
Yeah,
At least several of notable hip hop players have come
absolutely.
out of that place.
Big Sean, Eminem. I mean, growing up, I think Big Sean was just getting on the map, but any station you played, Eminem was on it at least half the time.
Yep.
So definitely a lot of exposure to that. I went to Plymouth Canton, which is a high school probably about 20 minutes outside of Detroit.
Okay.
And at the time, I don't know what you know about Michigan or Detroit itself. There's a lot of history.
I've been there twice.
Yeah.
But I have not spent time there. Yeah.
Well, at the time, we had a mayor, Kwame Kilpatrick.
Yes, I remember him.
And there was a lot of issues when he was mayor of Detroit.
I remember
and because of that, all the inner city schools, they basically didn't have funding.
Yeah.
And a lot of those kids went to the suburbs.
Gotcha.
So the school I was at was 6,000 kids, huge school. And it was a melting pot. I mean, internationally, there was kids from all over the place. And then we had a lot of kids, you know, a lot of different culture at the school. And I think that's where hip hop became a big interest. A lot of my friends introduced me to people, different artists. And so I got into hip hop as kind of my prominent, you know, that was my music choice in high school. And then after I got saved, that's when I started doing the artistry.
Gotcha.
So it was not during those early teen years, but definitely was a huge interest of mine. So, yeah.
What brought you to what brought you into hip hop, and then what brought you from hip hop to Christian hip hop?
That's a good way to ask that question, because I haven't thought about it in that way. I think there was something about hip hop that was free.
That was free.
It was free. It was like freedom of expression. I also think it was a way of life, right? It's not just the music; it's the way you dress, it's the things you do, the people you're around. It's there's a cultural element to it.
Did you guys listen to hip hop on the hockey team bus?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
We had some freestylers.
Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Freestyling hockey players.
Yeah, and being from Detroit, you know, I was like, there was definitely a cultural mix even on the hockey team.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, we had people from all over the place, but yeah, there's definitely some of that.
Nice, nice. So it was freeing. And then what made you kind of get to the Christian hip hop space?
Yeah. So after that time period, right after high school, I mean, it was straight out the gate. That's when I kind of was confronted with my faith growing up, and there was a Christian radio show that was very small, out of a community college in the area in Detroit. And I met the guy who hosted it. He had a whole hour of Christian hip hop.
Gotcha.
He'd have to play some other music because he couldn't just play all his preferences throughout the day. But
gotcha.
Anyways, that's how I got introduced to Lecrae, Andy Mineo, Derek. I mean, everybody reached records.
Yep.
And then I had some other friends who I got connected to through that DJ, and they pretty much showed me how to record, how to set up, you know, the studio, and it was pretty much on from there.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I love the phrase you used. You said, when I was confronted with my faith. What was that confrontation like? Was there a moment where it was smack dab, or was it more progressive and pulling at you? How would you describe the moment you surrendered?
That was a smack. Smack in the face.
Yeah.
Yep. I think at that time in my life, I was going 1,000 miles an hour, you know, like trying to, I don't know, like make a name for myself with things, trying to be an athlete, you know, going to school. I wasn't focused on my faith. It was integrated into my life. It was part of my life.
Yeah.
But when I was confronted with that injury, and it was like, oh, this is real life now. Like, I'm an adult. I got to pay my own bills here. You know, eventually I got to figure out who I am. Right. And I could have gone one way or the other. I could keep living for myself. I could, you know, choose this path, or I could choose to actually acknowledge God in the ways that I know, you know, I'm supposed to. I feel called to that. Yeah. But I've kind of been ignoring that calling. So I pressed into that. Gotcha. I couldn't see myself going down the other path. And yeah, I've been there ever since.
Yeah. What was that other path? What did that other path look like?
Honestly, like it sounds stereotypical and corny, but it definitely was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was, you know, going to the parties, you know, not really putting any commitment into anything, just kind of living however I wanted to live.
Yeah.
And that was because I was kind of feeling, it wasn't just confronted with, okay, I'm transitioning. It was also, I kind of feel sorry for myself. Like some of these goals that I had, like now I'm out of high school, I'm out of that bubble, and life's not what I thought it was. So, there was a side of me that I think was confronted with being rebellious in that way.
Yeah.
But it didn't fit.
Got it. So is this like that around 2010-ish, 2012-ish?
Yeah, that would have been 2010 or 11.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So at that time, I mean, Christian hip hop has to me evolved so much over the last decade. I mean, head and shoulders, man. When I think about 2025 versus like a 2015, it was good, but not nearly this good. So when I go back to 2010, how did you stumble upon Christian hip hop? Like, was it the thing where you said you got saved, but I still need to do this art form, and so you sought out, or how did you come across it?
Well, I always say this in interviews. I got to backtrack because I think when I was 16, my dad's in the studio. He's just outside of the studio area here, but he gave me my first Lecrae CD when I was 16.
Ah, okay.
So he was on it before I was.
Good job, Dad.
I think I listened to Jesus music on it, and that was it. And I was like, this is cool, but I don't know. It just at the time felt like it was diet hip hop to me.
It was what?
Diet hip hop.
Diet hip hop. I've never heard that phrase before.
It felt like
diet hip hop.
Like with anything, it's like this is a substitute for the music you listen to. And
Gotcha.
It's like, well, I'm not ready to substitute it.
Gotcha.
And then when I actually, it's kind of like when you read the Word.
Yeah.
You read the Bible and you're not saved. It's like, okay, it doesn't pop off the pages.
Yes.
The moment I got saved and I started listening, because 2010, everything was a sermon. Everything like. You're getting substance out of every single song.
It was
so I started listening for real, and that was when I was like, okay, I resonate. Yeah. I connect with this, and I love hip hop, and I want to reach people, and there's a community in this. Yeah. So I went head first.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Back then, you had much more almost sermons over wax. It was. So who did you take to? After the Lecrae thing, what were your next flavors of artists you were listening to that you find yourself
my inspiration early on, and it's funny because he's only a little bit older than me, but it is Andy Mineo. Andy was he was C-Light back then. He was C-Light. I have a C-Light shirt somewhere. Yeah, I know I do. And I met Andy. I had dinner with him. I opened for him early on. Yeah. So he was in reach. Yeah. We connected. But with Andy, I loved his sound. I thought that it was a good blueprint as a developing artist. So I kind of, attached myself to that. Right. But he was my first, I really connected. I would say Derek Minor too. And when I started listening to Derek, he was pro. Yeah, he was pro. So, being able to do a song with Derek later on, that was, he didn't realize how much that meant to me because I started with him. Yeah.
Derek's one of the favorites, man. I think, Derek is, to me, man, one of the best that we have lyrically, as a producer, as a, I'm going to say as a strategist.
Beast.
Right? He's just well-rounded, man, but super humble. So I just always like to salute Derek, man.
Yeah. And the other thing he does, too, he pours into people.
He pours into people.
For real.
Absolutely.
Outside of social media, outside, off the stage. Yeah. He's constantly checking in. He's always willing to give advice.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's so then what, when you started taking on the Christian hip hop thing, what was your intention?
It was not fame or money or anything. I could care less about any of that. It was impact.
It was impact.
I wanted to save people. Yeah. That was my motivation. And I was like, I love music too. This is a lot of fun. It's enjoyable. And it's sparking conversations, even with people in my neighborhood that I grew up with. It was like, what is this? Yeah. So there was a talking piece attached to the music as well. And I really was motivated to reach as many people as I could.
That's good. That's good. How has your kind of perspective on ministry evolved over time? Like, what do you see? How do you see it now versus when you first started? Are there any major shifts in how you view Christian hip hop ministry, if you will?
100%. Yeah. I think the music or the artistry and the quality of it matters more than it did. It was very much, and this is kind of in step with Christian hip hop as a whole. Yes. Now I think it's more about the artistry and the music and not just the message.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been more of a focus. I think that impact is still a big part of it, but there is a business side that I've learned over the years that it's practical and it's part of music being a business, not just a ministry.
Yeah.
So I know the people who are really like ministry over business or over money or whatever. Like I get it, I get where you're coming from, but I think there's a balance.
There's a balance. There's a balance, and I think some of those conversations are purposely heavy to get back to balance. So sometimes when you're so out of balance, you have to like press hard just to get back to the middle. You have to almost make it all about the other part to get back to center. You know?
I had that season.
Yeah.
I had that season. It didn't feel authentic enough. I kind of felt like I lost touch with the roots of it.
Right.
But it taught me a lot. So I think it was necessary to an extent. But there was a pendulum swing.
Talk about that, man, because I know one of the things. I mean, you toured, you've shared the stage with Lecrae and Andy Mineo and Mike Teasy and Miles Minnick and all those different things, and then you pulled up for a second. You pulled out, unplugged.
Yeah.
Why? What happened?
Ooh, that's a big question. I want to bullet point so it's not too long of a conversation.
No, that's cool.
There was a lot attached to that. I think part of it, exactly what you were just referring to with that balance. I was highly, focused on the spiritual side.
Yeah.
And I felt like there was a lot of people around me. Some in my immediate circle, and I'm not going to call anybody out. A lot of people I'm not affiliated with, but at the time I was. They were very much into it for maybe the business or maybe some other reasons that aren't the best. And I think that discouraged me because I wanted to be as, on fire for God. And also like, I took the leadership aspect of it very seriously, and I didn't have the balance. I didn't know what I was doing. I was freestyling everything. And on top of that, I started to have some mental health issues. And I don't think that was necessarily connected.
Okay.
It was during the same time, so I might have connected it then. But I think that would have happened regardless of, what I was doing at the time. So, I started to have what was called panic disorder. I was, going in and out of the doctor, in and out of the hospital, thinking I was having heart attacks.
Gotcha.
Just a lot of health issues that I didn't know what was what at the time.
Gotcha.
So that made me kind of pull away. But in the midst of that, I started to kind of question faith as well.
Gotcha.
So it was just a perfect storm of everything at once.
Yeah.
Stopped doing music, stopped attending church,
Gotcha.
kind of broke away from that, and I isolated.
Yeah. Yeah. So was it same? I guess a similar question as before. Was it a smack to you in your face one day of pull out, or was it more progressive and you're taking note and like how? What was that? What led up to the moment of saying I'm out of here?
Well, I guess I lived life on the edge, right? Because it was another one of those smacks in the face. It was definitely not something I had thought about and considered or talked to, someone who was discipling me or leadership. It was just like, this is so overwhelming all at once. I'm done. I actually remember the first time I really had a panic attack was actually the night before a show.
Wow.
I had a big show. It was, and these guys are good friends of mine still, and they know my testimony. They know my story at the time. I had a show with Stephen Malcolm, Beacon Light, if you know Beacon at all. TV Morris, I think, was on it. So there's a list of guys from Michigan who were on the event. We had sold tickets for like 2 months, all this. Had panic attacks the entire night, thought I was losing my mind.
Wow.
And I canceled it. I said, I can't make it, So that was the start.
Right.
And it was literally spur of the moment, day of. And that was the start of taking that whole 1.5 break.
1.5.
Yeah.
Wow. When you look at what pushed you to pull on the plug, if you were building all over again, what's your advice to, because I'm sure there's some folks listening right now who are like, well, okay, hold up. I want to be focused on the artistry and not have to focus on all those business things and surround myself with people who will help, take care of that so I can do this. What's your advice to people in building that team?
As a preventative measure?
I guess just if you were doing it all over again, right? Given what you said and what the circumstances that pulled you out,
Yeah.
right? How are you building differently so that you feel like you're, walking in the balance you want to walk in?
It's hard for me to answer because I feel like I separate the personal from that, but it's really not separate.
Yeah.
So I just got to get creative with the answer, because I think anything that you want to do in life and want to be successful at, it stems from how you live in your personal life, right? How you handle things, how you regulate your emotions,
Absolutely.
who you go to,
Absolutely.
right? How you take things. So I would say there is some practical elements of know yourself,
Yeah.
right? Go to therapy, get mentored, get discipled. Like if you haven't,
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of people, especially young people, who go into the church, which is awesome. It's great to see that there's a lot more interest right now, especially Gen Z and a lot of the new Christian hip hop fans. But a lot of people aren't being discipled,
Yeah.
or they're not in a community where there are those checks and balances. It's kind of like, especially if you're talented,
Right.
and you make amazing music out the gate, it's like you're now looked at almost like a leader.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
a pastor or something. And that was definitely the case back then.
Yes.
I think it's gotten a little bit better. But with that, there's more on you than just you're an artist who, is creating a fan base and a listenership. So yeah, having that behind the scenes is really important. Having that community, having that mental health in check, and knowing like, okay, this is how I respond to things.
Right.
If I don't work on that, it's going to get worse. The busier I get, the more stressed I get, the more that's put on my plate.
Right.
And so it's really important, I think, early on to handle that and get those supports you need.
Yeah.
So that's the most practical advice I could give.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I think you hit on some big points, man. I mean, the whole piece of like you said, know thyself and whatnot. It's amazing because just today on the Quilling Solution Show, I was talking about this article I recently read. Forget the guy's name, but I think it was from Gartner. And Gartner always does like great reviews on leadership and things like that. And he's talking about these 4 levels of leadership that each leader has to hit, right? And the first one was emotional intelligence, right?
100%.
Emotional intelligence, like understanding yourself, being able to process. One of the things I talked about was, you get to choose your response.
Yeah.
You don't get to choose what happens to you, but you do get to choose your response. And that's being able to like take it in, think about it. It's just like the word says, out of the heart comes everything, right? So take it in.
Yeah.
But the second one was intrapersonal, right? So knowing yourself at the deepest level in terms of who you are, why you are. And the third one was interpersonal, being able to understand other people. And my point there is, and I think this kind of aligns with something you said, is like seek to understand before wanting to be understood. So a lot of times you want people to join your team to do things for you, but you really need to understand this other person and where they want to go, right? Trying to force people into your vision a lot of times will backfire. See if you have vision alignment, right?
Absolutely.
That can do you a lot better. And then the fourth one was, dealing with artificial intelligence is a whole nother conversation, but yeah. So
it's relevant though.
It's relevant. Yeah. It's so relevant. Well, the thing that's so relevant about it is there's not an either or. There's not all in or avoidance. It's a balance thing because it doesn't replace wisdom, but it can help you conquer things with wisdom.
Spot on.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So it's not bitter, so if you could think of it that way, the example I use today, because I love to use examples, like, and I'm so dating myself, but it's the best one I could think of, is like Steve Majors when he became a $6 million man.
I know $6 million man, Steve Majors. I was like,
that's his name. That was his name, right? But then he became $6 million man, and he got the all the artificial stuff added to his body. He didn't give up being Steve Majors. He didn't give up what he knew about operating in the world, right? But he got this super robotic arm and leg and ability to run without ever getting tired and all those things, right?
He got the upgrade.
It
didn't make him who he was.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. It didn't change how he saw humanity. It didn't change any of those things, right? So he kept the wisdom, but got the upgrade.
Yeah. And that response part, though, I got to circle back to that.
Yeah.
Because there are things that I teach my clients. I know we haven't gotten into that.
Oh, we're going to go. Yeah.
That I have to apply to my life all the time.
Yeah.
I still have anxiety, right? I still have stress, right? Just like we all do. And I would say I'm more inclined to have an anxious response to things because that is a diagnosis I've had, right?
Yeah.
But just like with the example I shared, the show I had, what was that? That had to have been 6, 7 years ago now. But I felt so overwhelmed. I was in panic, and then I just threw everything out the window, right? It was like just complete chaos, and I responded chaotically. Now, I still get nervous for shows,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I still get nervous for things, and I've caught myself night before a show like, ooh, I got a little anxiety right now.
Yeah.
And I go through the strategies that I know that I teach people, fall asleep, and wake up, and everything's good.
Yeah.
The difference is how I respond to that feeling
That's good.
and those thoughts,
That's
right?
good.
And a lot of times people don't know how to regulate. And so they go, because I feel this way, this is reality.
Right.
You got to be able to separate those two. And I think that's part of that leadership element
That's
too.
good.
Being able to separate things that are going on around you from yourself personally. How are you identifying with that?
What got you to that point of being able to, because again, that's a high degree of emotional intelligence, being able to kind of see, it's almost like being able to step out yourself and see yourself and say, this is where you are right now. Don't do anything yet. Just hold on.
Third person
What
view.
helped you get there?
Counseling.
Yeah.
And I'm still a client, and I do marriage counseling with my wife.
Yeah.
And I do counseling as a day job. So I think it's very necessary. I think I've become more proficient teaching it, but there is a level of, there was no other way. It was necessity, right? Like if I want to live a normal life and enjoy myself, I have to do this.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, I am in chaos.
Yeah.
That's my go-to. I don't know why I'm like that.
Yeah.
I'm not, like I said, my dad's in studio today. I'm not blaming it on my parents.
Yeah.
Not blaming it on my church. I don't know why.
Right.
That's just how I naturally go.
So
right?
how'd you transition into counseling? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think through that process of kind of redefining faith, coming back into church community, and then doing counseling for a couple years, I was like, okay, I can see how God's using this, right? And there's a redemption part of it. Like, I don't think God created circumstances for me to go through that.
Gotcha.
But I do think that there's a level of growth that I would not have gotten to unless I experienced it myself, right? So a lot of times the way I even relate with clients is because of what I went through.
Yeah.
And that's so much more helpful and effective.
Yeah.
And that's really what made me go into my master's program was, I've seen the benefits of this. And I really want to be able to convey that to people, because I've always had an interest in counseling because I went into my undergrad in psychology. So that was already kind of.
So it was already kind of in the making.
It wasn't though, because I didn't go to grad school for 3.5 years after I graduated my undergrad.
Gotcha.
So I was not sure if I wanted to go that route.
What was your intention when you started? Like,
It was counseling.
It was counseling.
Yeah,
Was it a certain specialty or?
I think I've always just had a general desire to help. And that's part of even why I do Christian hip hop.
Gotcha.
And some of the music I even make. Not every song is a teachable, or a song that I'm trying to like reach people in that way. But that really feels like some of the purpose that God has called me to personally.
Right.
And so I think just that helping element. It wasn't necessarily, I want to work with this population.
Right.
And even now I'm very eclectic. I work with all kinds of different people.
Gotcha.
From all different walks of life. So,
Gotcha. That's dope, man. So, so you were saying one of the things is, when you mentioned counseling at the start, you said you still have anxiety.
Yeah.
Are there certain triggers for your anxiety?
I can tell you.
Yeah. I can tell you, but I'll have to kill you.
No, man, I'm an open book. But I have routines in place because of that, right? It's all about prevention and being preemptive with things.
Yeah.
And I threw that out the window this past month because I'm like, I'm going to put out 4 songs, 2 weeks at a time.
Right.
And I don't usually do that. So a lot of work on top of, I got a family, 3 kids, wife, and my job. So I was staying up throughout the week. I was staying up 4, 5, 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
Just just mixing stuff and recording and I'm a little perfectionist just with the music.
Right.
The perfectionism is better in other areas of my life. But with that being said, I think, there's a high degree of being preventative with things for me because I naturally go into that. And so creating those routines really helped me to stop the anxiety or the depression from going into that black hole.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got better. I took a few days to rest, but usually my rule, even with rest, is like I don't do that more than one night at a time.
Gotcha.
Do that one night, take a night off.
Gotcha.
But I had a lot of deadlines, so that's not my typical. But yeah, just doing that and knowing when I got to reach out to people, knowing when. Okay, if I keep going and leaning into this stress, I'm gonna be in a bad place. So I need to just kind of like take the night, right, and just relax and get good sleep, have some food, and that's it.
Yeah.
So being mindful of that, there is an awareness aspect for sure.
Yeah. Gotcha. So you know your triggers and you kind of build routines around them. Have you found counseling to be fulfilling? Have you found it to be more laborious than you thought? Like, what's your
I don't know what
take
laborious
so far?
means.
Okay.
That's above my pay grade. But
Labor heavy.
Labor heavy. When I first started, it was there. I mean, there was a level of imposter syndrome. It's like, I've never done this. I've been educated on it, but to actually come in here and act like an expert at first, it's daunting. Yeah. Right.
How long you been doing it now?
I've been doing it for 3 years.
Okay.
Yep. So I've been licensed for, I want to say, just over 2.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And so, basically you had to learn the craft before you could, be an expert and act like you're an expert in the process.
Yep.
That part of it was really difficult, but I think I'm past that. I really love it. There's definitely a fulfilling aspect to it. And then, I think it's one of those things that music is definitely at the forefront in my life. But when I'm 50, 60, 70 even, right, counseling's always going to be there. So it's something I very much enjoy that kind of fulfills some of those same aspects as music. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Coaching and counseling is almost like the equivalent of golf and sports, right? Like you won't be dunking forever. Okay, playing basketball, but you can golf till you almost hit the grave. I mean,
Yeah. Well, it's like music too.
Yeah.
You're going to do A&R work. You're going to write. You're going to do what you're doing.
Right.
Right. Start a radio station, a podcast.
Exactly.
So I mean, it's similar to that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Very similar.
Some longevity.
Yeah. What? Talk about Edge Urban Fellowship, man, and what you do there.
Yeah. The Edge.
The Edge.
So the Edge is the only hip hop church in the Midwest currently.
In the Midwest?
In the Midwest.
Wow.
I don't know if it is right now. I mean, Urban D, where he does Flavor Fest. Now I'm blanking on the church's name.
Tampa, Crossover.
Crossover.
Yep.
So obviously that's a hip hop church.
Right.
So we're not the only one in the nation, but I know there used to be some in Chicago that don't exist anymore. There was one, I think, in New York. And so and we've gone through a lot of evolutions to be able to still be here, building to building.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I started. Literally when I first began rapping, I remember we took a trip from Detroit to Grand Rapids, about a 2 and a half hour drive. And we went to the Edge just to check it out. And then I ended up moving to Grand Rapids, and that became my church. So that's how it all started. It was just fascination with this community and the Christian hip hop element. And then I built a lot of relationships over the years.
What, so I've been to Flavor Fest several times, and of course, Crossover. For you and the Edge, what is Christian hip hop church look like?
It's a melting pot. And I think there's a lot of diversity and learning to walk with each other with those differences. And that can be difficult and it can be extremely rewarding. And then, obviously incorporating a different art form into not only worship, but like how the church operates. I said, that cultural element just in hip hop. That's something that drew me. So being at a church that emphasized that was really cool. I mean, you go there, there's, especially at our old building, graffiti all over the walls, pieces all over, that's very much hip hop in nature. And then we got dancers, breakers, we got rappers, we got singers, R&B artists. I mean, just about everybody you can think of who would be a part of that community.
Yeah, that's good. So you've done a lot of work with a lot of different artists. What's helped you navigate through the CHH community as you have? Like I said, you've been on stage with Lecrae, Andy Mineo, Mike Teasy, Miles Minnick, done songs with Derek Minor, Stephen Malcolm, Red Tips, Ty Brazzle. These are not small names, for lack of better terms. I know they're all humble in their own respects, but these are all cats with great careers, man. What's helped you navigate through all that?
Well, Ty and Steven, and I would even say Breno and Miles, but they were later. I didn't meet them until more recently.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I came up with those guys. That was my
Right.
class
Right.
before. I don't even know if Rapzilla had a freshman class then.
Okay.
Maybe
Got it.
they've had it for a while, but we're all peers in that way, all
Yeah.
same age.
Yeah.
Obviously, Steven lives in Grand Rapids, so we both went to the Edge and did worship together. So there was some personal
Gotcha.
relationships there, but also like starting at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the other relationships I've gained over the years, that was just through right place, right time,
Right.
or online communities. Like I met Derek through Discord,
Gotcha.
truly met him and got to chop it up. And,
Gotcha.
but Miles and Mike Teasy and Breno and all those guys, that was all either online or I did a show and we were both on the event,
Yeah.
so, I think definitely some ties to timing,
Yeah.
right? And just, being able to build relationships authentically and the opportunity presented itself.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Back to your mental health focus, I couldn't help but notice that it bleeds into your music, right?
Mhm.
And I don't think that's by accident. I think that's
No.
very obviously, right? And then we just played one of the songs. Talk to me about your focus on mental health.
Well, I mean, just like we're talking about it here,
Yeah.
like you hadn't even asked me the questions. I'm jumping the gun, right? Because it's just such
Please.
a part of
Yeah.
not only who I am, but the ministry,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of tie-in with faith and mental health too, right? Not just how the church traditionally responds to it
Mm-hmm.
or how they handle it, right? And I think it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
But also looking at like, how do you navigate that as a believer?
Mm-hmm.
There's all these promises in scripture, right? God says, cast your anxieties on me,
Right.
right? These are the fruits of the spirit. There's nothing negative in those fruits,
Right.
And then you all of a sudden encounter something while you're trying to be a diligent follower that is opposite or seems opposite of that. And you go, okay, this challenges me, not only personally, but at the core of my beliefs.
Right.
And so that's why it's so important to me, even as a Christian hip hop artist, to put that in my music,
Right.
is that relatability. And also, I think a lot of people either hide it because they feel like it doesn't look good,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't fit this narrative of being a believer that bears these fruits or has this, these identifiers. But it also gives space, I think, for people to talk about it and talk about, hey, this is not a personal issue. This is not a character flaw.
Right.
Some of us just have, there's sin in the world, right? We're in a sanctification process. And let me tell you, that sanctification process for people who do go through anxiety, depression, they go through, whatever it is, OCD, it absolutely is a catalyst for who you could become in that process, right? So I think none of that goes to waste, even if it feels in the moment like this is chaotic, this is confusing.
Yeah.
So that's why I speak on it, because I think there's a lot more people out there, either they deal with it and they are an open book, or they're dealing with it and they don't know how to approach it or who to go to, or, what it would look like or how it would be judged. So that's why I speak about it.
Yeah. Does a lot of openings present themselves during your counseling for you to share the gospel with people?
So that's
directly or indirectly?
I was going to say it's tricky.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what I can say. I'll be as transparent
I'm curious
as I can.
to know. Yeah.
So I'm not technically a Christian counselor. I could.
Yeah.
I could label myself that. But I see people who are atheist, agnostic, Christian,
Sure.
Muslim. I will say the times where I've really had the space to share the gospel is with people who have lost faith.
Yeah.
So they typically come from a Christian background. Maybe they would even label it, a traumatic experience.
Right.
And so they're still tied to those roots.
Right.
But it's damaged, it's broken. And so I think those sessions, there's definitely been, not explicitly, but some sharing based off where the client goes.
Yeah.
Right. That has definitely been like, God's in the room.
Yeah. That's good. It's I was thinking about it because one of the things I think is interesting about coaching and counseling, and I liken the two, but I know they're distinct differences. So you'll forgive me if I'm totally wrong on this. You'll just tell me. But I remember. So when I came out of the corporate life, I said, let me do some executive coaching for a little bit while I get this this stuff together, right? Let me not lose all income. let me do some work. And so I did some executive coaching, and I went through the ICF program to get certified, right? And there's two things I remember distinctly. One is the acronym WAIT, right? Which stood for Why Am I Talking? Like, get the person to talk. Yeah, why am I talking, right? So literally, one of my professors would say, you should write that on your pad while you're doing a session and continually look at that mnemonic of why am I talking? Because if you're talking, they're not talking, and the idea is to get them to talking. The second thing was making you develop your quote unquote coaching model, right? And to me, they're like some that you could pull off the shelf, but then your professors would say, "Well, I want you to develop your own coaching model." And my model was SCORE, right? I just love athletic acronyms, so SCORE. Yeah. But the S was like what's the situation? C was the course. What course will we take to resolve the situation? But the O was out of you. All the answers need to come out of you. So if I'm really good at being a coach, what I'm doing is holding up a metaphorical mirror to you to get you to begin to see yourself, right, in all of you, right? If I'm really a good coach, right, it's not that I'm going to bring, like I may bring tools. I may bring the wheel of life, right, and make you go through the 8 areas of life and determine if your wheel is in balance. I may bring a, Myers-Briggs. I may bring a Hogan. But at the end of the day, the answers really are in you, is the belief in coaching, right? And what I've always struggled with, and that's why I'm curious to see if you have, is when you get to those moments in the conversation and the gap being presented is a faith gap. And I've always struggled with, like, as a coach, what am I to do here, right? I'm sitting there, and this answer is not going to come out of them because they don't have anything to bring. Yeah, if you don't have any Bible in you, you don't have any scripture in you, you've got nothing to bring. And I'm going, well, you're at a point now in this conversation where this is faith related. This is a faith gap here. Have you dealt with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How have you dealt with it? I
still am like, how do I share this? I mean, it's not a confidentiality issue. It's more so like, I don't necessarily go in with an agenda. I really don't.
Right.
I'm very free flow.
Right.
But yes, I've noticed that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it's like your pessimism, your nihilism, your depression is rooted in you believe in nothing.
Right.
Right. So, those are different cases.
Sure.
But a lot of times there is a gap either in perception and how it's connected to a circumstance.
Right.
And a lot of times there's a faith element in that.
Yeah.
Or it's just lack thereof.
Or lack thereof.
I just don't.
Absolutely.
Somebody's lacking faith, and
Right.
it's like, this is really impacting you.
Right.
Once again, I don't have an agenda, and this is not a sneaky way to bring spirituality into the counseling office.
Right. Right.
But this is a theory that drew me in.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I'm gonna use this and integrate it.
Right.
And that is existential theory. Right. So that's looking at the why. That's looking at who are you, what do you value, what brings you meaning, what brings you purpose.
Right.
If you lack that, it doesn't always mean it's going to go into faith. That could be hobbies, that could be, relationships, that could get into like, I just don't know what I'm doing. Right. My career's kind of just, I'm stuck.
Right.
But a lot of times spirituality comes out of that at some point.
Right.
Even if it's just questioning some of those bigger questions, like, what is this? Why are we here? Is there a God?
Yeah.
Right. And I think the people who have a faith background who come in and have lost faith, I don't have to do as much of that existential work because they're already bringing that in as a presenting issue.
Right. It's on the table.
Yeah.
It's already on the table.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a lot easier to kind of just talk through that and see, okay, what is damaging? Like, my goal is not to make you go back to church or be a Christian or anything. I want you to be more in touch with yourself, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not making you me.
Right. Right.
But guess what? I do believe that what I have faith in is the truth.
Right.
And so if it is true in the way that I believe it is, that's going to probably, become an outcome. And I have seen that happen with several clients.
No, that's true. Well, I mean, there's two things about what you said to me that like are just realities. One is, just like you said earlier, I forget how you said it, but you try to separate the personal from this, right? But it's hard to. I used to say, listen,
we all got biased a little bit.
In my Joe Pesci voice, right? Like, there's no two yous, okay? There's one you, okay? Unless you're a man going into a telephone booth and change into a cape, there are no two yous.
No alter egos.
There's one you. And so even as a coach, while you're trying to be as unbiased as you can as a coach or counselor and whatnot, you can't help but some of you eke out a little bit.
Yeah.
And especially when they get to those points where they're just stuck, right? Like just totally stuck. And you can't help but say, it's a God moment for you.
Mm.
You can't help but think it. This is,
Yeah.
because to me, I liken it sometimes. I don't know, but like I could think of a few clients where in my head, I'm like, you walked into the casino already. The chips are in your hand.
You're here for a reason.
You are placing the chips somewhere, okay? So if it's not faith in the God that I know and love that's created the universe, you're placing your faith on something else, on you, on a thing, on an accomplishment, on a team. You're placing your faith somewhere. So while the chips are in your hand and you're trying to decide, it's like a roulette thing or something, I can't help but say, place them there, right? But wanting to say, like, don't, because you're not just going to walk back out of the casino with the chips. You're going to place them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do it as smoothly as I possibly can with the bias I already have.
Yeah, with the bias, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like I said, no agenda, but there is an element of that that's just true. And if I, with my worldview, come in knowing this truth about this is what's helped me and those around me, and I know, like, when you're lacking something in that way, you're right. You're placing where God should be in your life.
Yeah.
In a different category or nowhere, right? You're absent of that. And so what is in place of that?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, either those things are not fulfilling or they're partially bringing you down.
That's a big one.
So I tell people this all the time too. Like, even your kids, even your wife, your spouse, whoever, that can't be your anchor. Because if that's your only anchor, right? God forbid, what if something happened to them?
Right.
Or, right, what if that is out of balance?
This is so good, man, because the connection to the mental health here for me can't be more clear in terms of, and I'm guilty. I'll be the first one to say I'm susceptible, or at least have been. I think I'm less now than getting into certain routines that give me that sense of, this is awesome, right? But it's like a bad drug. Each time you get less high.
You're so on point right now.
Right, each time.
These are conversations and thoughts I've had this week.
Whether it's your Chick-fil-A fix, whether it's on Friday, whether it's this, that, and that. Each time you require a larger dosage to get as much. So if you don't get to the point of joy in the Lord, genuinely, you are chasing different fixes. Some fixes are legal, some are illegal, but you're chasing fixes.
Yep.
And so when you think about that, and you think about, like, we're in the middle of Mental Health Month, and next month is Men's Mental Health Month, given everything you've been through, everything you've seen, if someone was going to say, listen, I may not watch this whole interview, but I want to hear Edify's take on how I improve my mental health, what would you offer them?
Well, I think it's not it's an alley-oop.
Yeah.
Because we just talked about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not just about getting rid of symptoms of anxiety, depression, whatever else, right? That's maybe at the beginning of counseling.
Right.
We want to improve. I'm going to give you practical tools, right? But it gets deeper. Why am I still in counseling?
Right.
If I do this for a living and I give tools, there's obviously something more to it than just knowing strategies, right? So for me, it really does come down to those existential values, which typically turn into faith values. Right. And knowing yourself intimately, deeply, and you can only do that through knowing Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the biggest thing is exploring that, being more introspective.
Yeah.
Right. If you haven't done things to put yourself in a position to be challenged deeply, right? It's difficult. It's uncomfortable.
No doubt.
Sometimes it's painful.
No
but
doubt.
It's absolutely worth it, because once you get through that, you rip the Band-Aid off, you go through and not around, there's a lot more there at the other side.
Man, that's those two words together, those two phrases, existential values, know Jesus. Like,
and I wouldn't explicitly say that. Let me
no, but
put that on there. But
that's
true.
That's a banner. That's a shirt right there. Existential values, know Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times we talk about values, it's almost like authentic. They become like buzz phrases, right? Values, be authentic, be transparent. When you add existential values, when you add existential
Big picture.
to it,
If
it's just
anyone's confused with that, big picture.
yes, it like
Right.
ladders it up though in a different way, right? So
Yep.
all right, so let's talk about you've landed a lot of different things, man. NBA arenas, 2K campaigns, yada yada. Like you've been places. What do you want now? Like if you had to chart the next 2 years for Edify and your ministry, the edge, so on and so forth, what's the vision? Where are you going?
So there's a lot to that. Some is practical, some is definitely more spiritual. I think I definitely for a season of life would love to be financially, sustained by the music.
Yeah.
Right. Being able to do this full time, and it's halfway there at times, and some weeks, some months are a little bit different.
Yeah.
I think that is definitely a goal in the next couple of years, and I'm working towards it.
That's
There's
good.
been a lot of progress the past couple of years before. I think that yes, there's still an element of sync placement. I really enjoy doing the TV, movie, video game, getting stuff on entertainment, or being a part of that. There's also that financial element.
Yeah.
That's all on the practical side. I think on the spiritual side, or the artistry side, I really want to build with people differently.
Yeah.
I care less about accolades.
Yeah.
I think connecting with my listeners and truly having a demand from them for my art is something I've had in the past, and I haven't had as much recently. It's been more of those practical things, which are awesome. It's just like right here, these are amazing, but there's a real world impact.
Yes.
And I think that's something I want to build a lot more. Have demand for certain types of songs, have demand for albums, and so I'm building towards that.
That's good. That's good. What if your wife was here and I asked her?
Oh no.
Where you're at on that journey? What would her response be?
She knows the work I put in. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Wives do.
And the connecting.
They do.
Right. Like even this trip. Shout out to my wife Brittany.
Yeah. Would she say you working too hard?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But not all the time. It's been out of balance, and I'm bringing it back to balance.
Yeah.
It's just a season thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, she knows the work I put in. She knows the amount of time I spend, but also and it's not in place of family time.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I am staying up so late and doing things throughout the night. But just even establishing relationships, like being here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She's at home right now with the kids, and she's doing an awesome job, and I really owe a lot to her for that. And so she's a great support.
3 kids. What ages?
So my youngest is 3 this month. My middle is almost 5.
Yeah.
And then my oldest is 11.
Boy, tell you what, you better bring something back with you for her.
Yeah. You're right. That's good advice.
You better pack a Philly cheesesteak. Take
Absolutely.
Something. Yeah. Don't walk in empty-handed. Let me close with this. If you are talking to that 2011-ish Edify, right? So you were 20-ish, 19, 20-ish, right? Who again just got saved, on fire for the Lord, looking to go out, zeal, but not a lot of experience yet. A lot of zeal, but not a lot of experience. What would you tell him? What would be your advice to him? Assuming he's willing to listen.
Well, it's funny you asked that question. I think there is a thought experiment I do a lot, even with my kids. Like, picture myself 20 years from now when it's not chaos in the house. Like this would be a moment I want to come back to, right? But I think about my younger self visiting me now, and I know there's going to be a version of me later that I want to visit. And there are things that God has allowed me to do, a lot of inner work. Not necessarily accomplishment, but there's some of that I think that younger version would be like, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know we could do that. I didn't think that was possible.
I didn't know we could do that.
I had a limit on myself. Even in faith, and finding Jesus, I had a lot to work through to experience and change my perceptions in a positive direction. Right. That took work, but it was possible. And I would very much just want to go back to that version of myself and say, hey, you can and you will. be
You
easier.
can and you will.
Be easier on yourself.
Be easier on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can and you will.
Mm-hmm.
That's good, man. That's good. Tell the people where they can catch up on all things Edify, man.
Absolutely. So my tag, my username on everything is I am Edify. I am Edify. On YouTube, TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on there. If you go on any streaming platform from iTunes to Spotify, just type in Edify, Edify, like I said. You'll find all my music, my whole catalog. That's how you connect with me. That's how you listen to me.
That's what's up, brother. Thank you for coming through the Holy Culture, man. It's a pleasure to have you, bro.
Man, thank you again for having me. I really, really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Y'all keep it locked right here. We're going to jump into an Edify superset, y'all.